Everybody, this is Morgan J. Ingram here with another Chronicle on the SDR Chronicles, and I'm bringing more guests on the show, as you guys know. And so here I have Brandon from Serious Insights, co-founder. Super excited to have him on the show today to talk about sales development. And without any further ado, I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit more, and we'll dive right into the show.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here with you. And it's funny when I think back to starting Serious Insight 5 years ago. Was there anything more important that I did than sales development? I don't think so. I mean, that was really the definition of my role. So my co-founder, Ryan, is the technical architect of our application, which for those of you that may not know, we're a sales platform for Gmail and Outlook that connects with Salesforce. So he was building it, right? He's the architect and knows the product. My role was to get on the phone and call everybody that I could think of and connect with folks on LinkedIn and get feedback on the original product 5 years ago. So the two of us, ran the company just together for the first 9 months or so. And so I basically split time between doing sales development and then kicking it up to myself to do demos, kind of an account executive type role and trying to get those deals closed. And then also doing support and success. So I kind of did all those things before we were able to bring more people aboard. But I think, sales development is probably about the most important thing that any company selling any sort of product or service can do. And yeah, one of the things that we're really getting back to our roots on as much as we can these days is in-person sales development. And I think it's a fascinating topic because we're a tech company. We sell software to salespeople, so we're pretty focused on activities like phone calls and emails and action items, to-do lists, showing demos, advancing the call, doing a handoff to the account executive. But so much of the success we can trace to in-person meetings, meeting people at events, scheduling trips, getting in front of people. And probably one of my favorites actually came through today, where we have a little thing on the website that says, "How did you hear about us?" And a lot of people will say, as a referral, or saw your website, or I saw an ad, or I saw a listing. And this person writes in and says, "I met one of your sales development reps at the pizza joint in this city." And that's how I found out about Serious Insight. And I was like, that's exactly right. What a perfect first encounter with software. It's not a demo. It's over a slice of pizza.
Awesome. I mean, that's crazy. And so, yeah, so you guys kind of, Brandon dove into it right there, but we're going to talk about basically, hey, like calls and emails. We talked about the strategy. We talked about the mindset of that, but let's talk about the in-person, SDR, like the field, on the field, like on the go. I think that's something that is not really talked about that much, but needs to be talked about more, as I feel like the human interaction face-to-face is one of the most important interactions you can have with a human. So what the topic of today is really, how to have the proper etiquette as a SDR as you're out in the field to help you schedule more demos. So my first question is, Brandon, how do you prepare for events as an SDR? Like what's the different mentality than going on the phone or doing email?
It's a great question, right? Because when you read kind of the hallmark writings of the day that deal with sales development, including Aaron Ross's Predictable Revenue and a lot of the other kind of key pieces of literature, they really revolve around training for internal sales process, right? So cadences, this many emails, this many phone calls, the order in which you do that, how many you need to have in the pipeline to hit quota and meet your forecast, et cetera. But yeah, first it starts with the training, right? How do you prepare for an event and not just throw yourself into a situation where you're standing in front of a booth and kind of wondering, how the heck do I do this? I'm used to calling people and kind of running the show on my side. So internally here for us, at least, we've got some people that really love doing events. They're really comfortable doing and have done a lot of them. And so we've set up a couple internal resources. One of them so we have buyer personas, right, for our overall sales process. But then we also have what are called booth personas, which honestly are a little bit more fun. So a booth persona might be, the person that comes to the booth that just wants to talk. They should have a really long conversation about anything under the sun. They may not even be that interested in the product. They just want to hang out at the conference. So you've got that person, you've got the bona fide decision maker, right? That's really out hunting for products and services to meet their needs.
Yeah.
You've got the investor types that stop by. And so the first part of getting ready, I think, for an event from a sales development perspective is different people that are probably going to come by your booth or your happy hour, whatever the event may be, and how you're going to approach talking with those different folks. What are your angles? How do you want to get into those conversations? How do you want to get out of some of those conversations? And what are your action items? What are you trying to achieve in that conversation? So most of us, when we're doing sales development by email, the goal may be to set up an appointment. And then the goal of the appointment is to get the person to show up, attend the call, and then maybe to start a trial or take some other action. But the goal for a conference or a happy hour may be to set up that call, or maybe to install a mobile app right on site at the conference. We've done a bunch of that, which has been pretty successful. So you really have to kind of set your goals for the event and then try to measure them afterwards and say, okay, can we even achieve that through an in-person meeting?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I kind of want to loop into that, what you just said there. So the goals for in-person, of course, are going to be different from phone and email. How do you determine that goal? Is it based on the event? Is it based on how many people you're bringing SDR-wise? Like, how do you determine those goals?
Yeah, it's a good question. And some of it, honestly, I think it's hard to determine it for the first event, right? It's almost a cart before the horse exercise. It's almost like you got to go to an event, make a bunch of mistakes. I think we've probably made all of them. Make a bunch of mistakes and kind of like look and see which booths are doing really well. Like, man, those folks are killing it. We need to bring a whatever giveaway next time, or we need to have a big screen to show our application, or we need to dress up, or do whatever it is they're doing that works. We need to do. But the low hanging fruit for most of the events is a lead count, right? How many leads did you get? How many business cards did you gather? How many badges did you scan when you were there? So that's kind of like a threshold metric, and it's very similar to sort of an activity count, right? How many calls did you make? Your 100 calls today? Did you make fewer? Did you make more? And then it's threshold level of measurement and success based on the lead count. So if we've gone to an event last year and got 250 leads, we'll try to double that this year. We'll try to say, hey, can we get 500 this year, because we're that much better at doing events and we know kind of more what we're doing. But beyond that, it's like, okay, leads is one thing. But then we also set goals for, okay, how many follow-up conversations do we want to get out of the event? Basically booked calendar meetings on the floor. How many trials do we want to get out of it? So folks that are maybe installing our application on site. And this is contextual to us. For a lot of the folks listening are probably in software, but if you have a product that you're trying to sell, maybe it's pre-sales, or it's people buying a discounted version on the floor of the trade show, stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of setting out a few of those and then saying, to your point earlier, depending on how big the show is, who you're going to bring with you, and how many can each reasonably do during the course of the event based on the size of the booth you chose and the location, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I mean, and that's something that's really interesting, right? Because you just said the number of leads you get, or the number of accounts that you said, or the follow-up emails that you send, and the demos, and basically, or the meetings that you set up. Should we be more focused, maybe as SDRs, not on how many business cards that you get in your pocket, but how many actually meetings get set up, or actually how many meaningful conversations you get that actually lead into that actually close business?
Yeah. And I think, and one of the things that I've tried to do better at myself is, because anytime I go to a conference, I'm going to have a lot of great conversations, right? It's just fun. It's fun to meet people. It's like getting set free for the day. Hey, I got out of the office and now I'm like hanging out.
Running around.
There's good food. People are having fun.
Yeah.
And so anytime folks come back from an event, it's a little bit of a red herring to say, how did the event go? Because they'll inevitably say, the event was great, right? There was good music, there was good food, and I had a lot of great conversations. I mean, people were really interested in what we do. Somehow you got to measure that. And so some of the best metrics are going to be, okay, in addition to all those fun conversations, I'm glad you had a good time. How many leads did we scan in? How many calls are on the calendar for next week, like booked on the calendar? And then because then we can follow up on those and say, hey, it was great to meet you, confirming we're going to meet next Tuesday at 2:00. And then we can measure, did the person in fact show up for the Tuesday at 2:00? And if they do, great. And if they don't, then we follow up with them some more and try to reschedule it. So at least there's a firm thing that we're aiming for, in this case, an appointment on the calendar. Otherwise, if you're not doing that, with your laptop or your Surface or your iPad on the floor, booking those appointments, the risk is you come back from the event and everyone just says the event was great. Everyone loves our stuff, because it is harder for someone to say, I'm really not interested, I couldn't care less about what you do, when you're in person. So I think sometimes you get a little bit more unvarnished truth when you're on the phone or by email, and people will kind of say like, I'm not interested, right? Far more unusual to get that when you're in person. You don't have too many people come by the booth and just say, man, I couldn't be less interested in what you guys do. It's just
it's a rare
not applicable, because people don't want to be rude, right?
No,
None of us want to say that.
They don't.
Everyone's going to say, oh, that looks really interesting. Good luck. Man, you guys look like you're doing great. Yeah. Site and see a demo maybe next week. Oh yeah, I'll check you later. It's like, oh, next week? Great. Let's put a time on the calendar and then find out if it's real or not.
Right. And so we talked about basically the metrics and the procedures of basically getting ready for the event. Okay, so you're at the event, you made it. You're an SDR, you're in sales development. You're trying to get meetings, and you're trying to move the pipeline. So what are some good intros to get in front of the people that you know you're trying to get in front of, but they may have basically rejected you on the phone and rejected you on email?
Right. Yeah. Kind of those icebreakers. And honestly, I like to watch a lot of the folks on our team that I think are a lot better at it than I am. Right. I have a certain approach that I take with people, and then I watch them do it. And I'm like, man, they're just owning the booth, right? They've got an aura about them where they can go up to anybody and break the ice and put the person at ease and talk with them. So, first things first, there's like kind of basic rules of etiquette at the booth. And to make it worthwhile to even go to a conference, don't sit down at the booth and crack open the laptop and kind of work through your emails, right? Emails are going to be there at the end of the day. And you see way too many people at the events just kind of doing work or just talking amongst themselves, right? Like they're there on a tour of the event. It's like, you got to be out in front of the booth, glad handing, talking with everybody, meeting them. Hey, where are you from? What brought you here? It's nice to have a little handout, something of tacit value to the person. Hey, here's a free book. Here's a gift card. Here's a stuffed animal. I mean, whatever it is, pens, whatever it is that you give away. It's nice to have that. You hand sling to somebody and, hey, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming to the conference. How's it going so far? So yeah, it's kind of, we know that the moment we show up to a conference, and I would say always be early, because weird stuff happens logistically at conferences. Show up early, and when you're there, have a good night's sleep, get your workout in the morning, get loaded up on your Starbucks, because you're going to be on the floor for 8-10 hours, and you got to be on the whole time. There's no sort of like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go, like you might do at work, you might power through 50, 100 calls, and then like, I'm going to take a break for a while.
Exactly.
At the conference, there's no break. You're just going to hustle away for 10 hours and then crash at the end of the day. And so it's being ready for that.
So how can you get ready for that? Right? Like you haven't experienced that continuous 8 to 10 hour grind. Is it just, hey, have someone who's like with you, that's kind of like pushing you along? That's, at least when I go to events, that's what I have. Or is it just like, can you mentally prepare for this? Like, what are the things you can start doing to get yourself ready for that 8-10 hour grind, which it is?
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, all of us in the SDR game, we're talking on the phone quite a bit. We're emailing quite a bit. We're maxing out activities. So it's not like a full workday as a foreign concept. But it is different just to be projecting over the din of a big conference or expo. And so, yeah, you definitely want to bring your pack of gum, your lozenges, have a bottled water nearby. Because and Dreamforce or SaaStr, these big conferences are great examples of places where you show up and you'll see some booth staff. They'll lose their voice after 2-3 hours, right? And it's like, now what? There's 2 more days left in the conference and they can't even communicate. So you got to take care of yourself, kind of physically. When I think it's just getting psyched up about, this is going to be awesome, right? This is my opportunity to meet a lot of people that I might not otherwise have a chance to meet, learn about their businesses. They're here to talk. If they didn't want to talk, they probably shouldn't attend a conference. So it's pretty much an open invitation to start up conversations. For us, and I agree with you, having a buddy system is good. I mean, you never want to send someone to a booth just by themselves.
Exactly.
Like, hey, Sally, will you just handle this conference by yourself and come back and let me know how it went? It's like, they're just solo, right? And you can do it, but it's not optimal. You always want to go at least in pairs. And then we found the best results where you go in a pair, and then it's like a friendly competition. The start of the day, it's like, cool, we're at 0 right now. With my scanner, I'm going to get 200 leads today. And if I win, you're taking me a lunch when we get back to work. And if you win, I'll take you out to lunch. Okay, let's go. And it's fun. Or I'm going to get this many installs, or whatever your goals might be. And that way, every time there's a little break, it's like, hey, how many leads you got? How many leads you got? And everyone's comparing. And then it keeps the momentum up, right? It's like having the scoreboard in the game. No one watches the game if there's not a scoreboard.
Of course.
So it makes it fun.
I love that. I love that. And so let's dive down deeper into that. Like, you know, in the game, I see, to make the analogy, like when I've been to conferences, I see a lot of sales reps just sitting down and waiting.
Right.
So what can you say to the people who are just waiting? Like, how can you go out there and get it, and get in front of those right people? Because I every time I'm at a trade show, I see people just sitting there waiting, and I'm like, that's not going to get you any results.
Yeah, yeah. And you never want to eat at the booth either, right? I mean, it's just the same as retail, right? You don't go into Gap, people aren't, you know, knocking down a foot-long Subway at the checkout counter. It's like, if they're not doing it there, probably shouldn't do it. A booth is just an extension of the company. So you're going to grab lunch, you're going to do it on a hurry, but take turns at the booth, right? Have a rotation, stuff like that. I think if things are slow, and things do slow down in the expo, is just, you know, be ready for it. Take that time to restock your giveaways, reset your demo reel, et cetera, et cetera. And you know that when it's the keynote, the expo is going to shut down, sometimes on purpose. And then when the keynote opens, it's just going to be a flood of people, right? But during those slow times, go meet everybody else at all the other booths, right? A lot of those companies are probably buyers also, or they'll be interested in what you have. So we always like to, you know, make friends with the other partners they're sponsoring. They'll want to sell you stuff. You'll want to sell them stuff. So it's cool. Everyone's in sales. They know what to expect.
Exactly.
Opportunities to do a lead swap, right? Hey, I see you guys on the far side of the hall. You guys are hustling. You're probably meeting people that we're never going to meet because there's so many people here. So at the end of the show, if you guys want to swap business cards or swap lead scans, that way everybody wins. You know, you wouldn't necessarily do that with your number one competitor, although in some ways there's an argument why not. But with someone that's just there as a sponsor with a complimentary product, why not do a swap? That way you've doubled your impact, right? You get that many more leads without doing any additional work. Otherwise, and it depends on the rule of the show, you don't want to rub the organizers the wrong way and do something that you're not supposed to. At the same time, I mean, you're there to hustle. You're not there to hang out at the booth. And if they're not sending enough traffic, then oftentimes it's a matter of, you know, you find a choke point. That's the entrance, that's the exit, that's the entrance or exit to a conference room where they're giving a big speech or an expo.
Yeah.
You know, that's getting into one of the conference rooms before it starts, putting out a bunch of collateral on all the seats, or meeting everybody before they officially start speaking. So you just go row to row and like, hey, everybody, how's it going? Hey, I just want to give you, we came with way too many gift cards. Yeah, I can't believe we printed this many. I just want to give everyone one. Hey, can I get a business card in exchange? And everyone's like, great. They got nothing else to do. They're just sitting there waiting. So it's just finding out a way to strike up those conversations where there are groups of people gathered together. Workshop rooms, conference keynote rooms, exits, entrances. You know, you make it work. You get creative.
I love it. And so kind of winding down with a couple last questions here.
Yeah.
With the procedure of the trade show floor, I mean, that's where the majority of the SDR will be. What do you get telling those people, okay, maybe you're not on the trade floor, what can you be doing? Hey, go into different maybe talking tracks or just hang out a spot where people are just meeting. What are you telling SDRs? Hey, you're not on the trade floor at this time because there's things happening outside. Maybe there's a party or an event. What are things you can be doing then to continuously be setting meetings and continuously making new relationships?
Yeah, I mean, if it's during the conference and there's a particularly useful track, like, hey, we want to see this person speak, they're an expert in sales development, then we'll send at least one person there and be like, hey, when you get there, if you're allowed to, you know, record the session or at least take great notes and bring it back to the team and we'll review it later. Like I said before, if it's lunchtime, we usually have one person go and bring back lunch for everybody because we can't shut down the booth, right? That's not a good decision. No. But otherwise, I mean, all of those opportunities then are selling opportunities. You know, you're in the lunch line, you meet people there, you go to a session, you know, and you don't want to do this in the wrong way. So there's a right and a wrong way to do this, but you know, the organizer finishes the session and then it's like, hey, does anybody have any questions? And I don't like the folks that raise their hand and give a big speech about their company.
Yeah.
But I don't mind folks that raise their hand and say, you know, hey, I'm Joe from XYZ company. We make this product. My question is, when I'm selling this product, how can I do this part best? As long as you get into the question relatively quickly, now you've at least given a little mini elevator pitch about who you are and your product to the whole group. And sometimes after the session, you'll get people come up to you with questions.
Right.
So the speaker's done with their thing with it. Hey, did you say you're with ABC Corp? Yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, you guys do some cool stuff. So it's any opportunity to get the word out. You know, it's part sales development / marketing, right? We're sort of marketers in a lot of ways.
Yeah, of course.
It's just getting the word out.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, I've loved you on the show so far. I think we've covered some great insight on really how to articulate yourself at events and really the etiquette around it. So one last question for you. What is the number one piece of advice that you would give to a sales development as they start their role?
Number one piece of advice, if it's related to events, and I'll extrapolate it to be related to anything, could be phone calls, could be emails, I'd say role play, because it's one of the hardest things you can do. As soon as you say role play, people start to get nervous, right? They slink down their seats and they maybe start to read the book, because it's like, it's the same as being in the classroom. It's like, don't call on me, but you got to get called on to find out, what you know. And for us in sales development, it's all about being verbal ready. It's not that you know or don't know the material. You probably learned it, or you're learning it as you go on the job, but can you articulate it? When you get that objection, can you respond quickly enough, or do you have to resort to the library of information? So we've gotten our best results when before the event, we all get together in what we call the ping pong room, the conference room, and just go through a series of role plays. Hey, what happens when this type of person comes to the booth? How are we going to run it? You play the person, you play the booth staff, let's run. And doing the same stuff with phone calls, listening to some recorded phone calls, doing phone calls, we'll set people up in 2 different rooms in the same building and just say, call each other and work through it, until you get it to a point where you feel comfortable with it. And then you can start calling the customers. And same with emails, send some emails to your friends, to your family. Does it come off as real? Or do they feel like, who the heck is this from? Like a robot could have sent this. It's probably not going to break through. So most of the stuff just boils down to practice. You got to send a few hundred that are bad, that are mistakes, and then you start figuring out what stuff works. So as many of those couple hundred you can do in the practice gym, that way you don't have to have too many of those, failures in the game.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for the insight. I know the audience will love what was shared here today, and it's very practical and be used as there's a lot of events coming up here.
There's a ton. There's a ton this year. So we'll see you guys in a couple weeks out at SaaStr, and then we'll see you down in Atlanta.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on the show. And as I always say, guys, keep dialing, and I'll see you guys soon.
You got it. Thanks, Morgan.